Hello, my little hackmons. I came across this very interesting questionnaire about fictosexuality, and I wanted to take the time to respond in video form and really talk about it. Being a fictosexual, it's been challenging recently because there's problems that we face that I'm sure many other people have not, and when you can't find someone who shares those experiences, it's devastating and very hard. So today I wanted to take the time to discuss these questions. Number 1. I've seen folks say that they are dating their fictional others, and some say they're married. At what point do you consider yourself married to an FO? So, I personally have never really considered myself to be married to a fictional other, which is what FO stands for. I've always sort of imagined myself in almost like a polyamorous relationship with my fictional crushes. I don't know if there's a term for this, but like they're all in love with me. I'm in love with all of them, but like they're not in love with each other. I don't know if there is a word for that. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, sometimes I imagine like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to be married to so and so? But I've never really considered myself married to any of them because I just couldn't commit. I just couldn't pick one. For those who draw and write, do you draw and write your FO with yourself or an original character that you've created to represent yourself? This may sound bad, but OC's original characters are a major part of my life, and they inspired me to go on the career path of being a horror film director. I've always kind of made original characters for various fandoms. First there was like Pokemon ones and, sort of fun stuff like that. But as I began to grow into my sexuality, I began making characters specifically to be the girlfriends or wives of characters I had crushes on. And it's such a fascinating process. I wish I could just grab you all and just take you into my mind and take you on a strange, sometimes even horrifying journey of what goes in to these characters. Sometimes, the thought process is like, well, what type of girl would really be compatible with so-and-so? Sometimes it's what aesthetic would look really cool with so-and-so. Or sometimes the aesthetic doesn't even need to match the source material. Like, the Bride of Sephiroth is almost like 1920s when she's a Final Fantasy character, which is obviously very futuristic and modern. Same goes for some of the Resident Evil girls that I've introduced, but they don't have to perfectly match their surroundings. That's what makes them unique. I've always felt like I've never matched with my surroundings. I've always felt different, strange, outsider, but that's how they are, and not in a self-conscious way, in a beautiful way. They are so different. There's something about them that just makes them instantly likable, iconic, and recognizable. And I've always wanted to make movies about my original characters. When I make actual movies, obviously they're going to be distanced from whatever franchise they were envisioned as part of. But, being a fictosexual and having a lot of other sort of background issues too, and some trauma, you do have some really sad and scary thoughts sometimes. And, I feel very guilty sometimes when I fantasize about my fictional crushes. So, there's sort of a need to balance the love with the terrifying. Like they say, there's a fine line between love and hate. And that's why so many of them turn out to be scary because of that. Because I want to act on things I've felt, things I've experienced, things I've heard from others. Sometimes I just want to let it all out or show others what it feels like. So that's why a good majority of them are, if not scary, then definitely evil. So yeah, I'm proud to say original characters are what set me on the career path I'm currently on, and I'm studying film right now. I am making student films. Like, people who say that, fictosexual love isn't real and making characters like that is a waste of time. That's what's gonna get me a job one day.
Do you exclusively date your FOs in your mind, or do you have a physical item that you use to represent them in the real world, like a plush or a pillow?
Yes, yes, yes. I love to collect merchandise of my crushes. I should, do a whole tour of that. But, just some examples. I have a Persona 5 Joker pillow. Here's Denki from My Hero Academia. Got a Severus Snape plush. And Muzan from Demon Slayer. I love, just being able to have something to squeeze and hold. It's not even necessarily a romantic thing. I just love stuffed animals and cuddly toys, I have an obsession with Pikachus for some reason. Well, I mean, the whole Pokemon toy line, but there's just something so magical and adorable about Pikachus. And sometimes you just really need to hold a Pikachu and just pet it gently. And that's basically how I feel about, plushes and pillows. Body pillows get a very bad reputation. People think that people who own them are weird just because some of them have sexual art on them. But really, actually, for me at least, it's been a really good tool to help comfort things like depression and anxiety, and a body pillow doesn't necessarily have to be, like I said, a crush or a romantic thing. It can simply be if you want the feeling of holding on to someone or something. Like, they even make sort of like body pillows of like cats and dogs, if you, I don't know, let's say you live in an apartment where you can't have a pet, but you just really want to feel like the warm embrace of cuddling a cat when you need it the most, it's there for you. And, oftentimes there's not plushies of my more obscure favorites. So, like, Seymour right here, he is a super unpopular character, but I almost cried when I found him for sale at a secondhand comic book store. So honestly, like, any merchandise I can have is just like a blessing to me. It just makes me so happy no matter what it is. If it's like a stupid pencil or like a thing for my school folder, just using it just gives me this feeling of just intense happiness, and I love it. I'm always on the hunt for merchandise of any of my crushes lately. It's been a lot of Final Fantasy, Devil May Cry, Resident Evil. Final Fantasy I've had some alright luck with, but Resident Evil and Devil May Cry have been very hard recently. I've never seen any of that stuff in stores, only online, and it's all super expensive because it's old. And like, a lot of the Resident Evil characters I like are very niche and obscure, so like, who knows when they'll be relevant again. So, if any of you out there, like Devil May Cry or Resident Evil, please tell me, like, if you know any good places for merchandise. I will be eternally grateful.
Does your FO have a love interest in their source material? If so, how do you go about that? Do you just ignore it? Or does it perhaps feel like some kind of betrayal?
So, like I said before, because I have a lot of crushes, some of them do and some of them don't. And I think it's a very case-by-case thing for me. Like, if it's shown that they don't really care, or they're just manipulating the love interest, or the love interest doesn't want to be with them, then I can ignore it. Or, of course, if the love interest dies, which is my favorite possibility. So, like, some examples are Excella from Resident Evil 5. I mean, already Wesker wasn't interested in her, but, oh, baby, she got what was coming to her! I apologize. If you like Final Fantasy, there is Era. who is Arden's girlfriend, and she's dead. Da 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 da. I know it sounds morbid, but when someone in a book or movie or game, whatever, you know, sort of steals away an object of my affection, and then something happens to them in return, it's like watching those instant karma compilations on YouTube. Like, they didn't do anything necessarily wrong in the story's eyes or the public's eyes, but something happened that made you hate them so much that when the slightest bit of bad luck happens to them, you're just like, yeah! Some of them I can ignore, like, again, another Resident Evil example. William Birkin is canonically married to a woman named Annette, but in the game, Annette specifically says, like, yeah, we're married, but we're more married to our work than each other, which, a loveless marriage can happen. So I think, in that instance, I'm still safe. I'm still going. That's why, you'll notice in Team Apocalypse, the group of Resident Evil girls on this channel, Beth Swanson is the only one that does not take her husband's last name, and that is because she is an extramarital affair with William Birkin rather than his actual wife. Now it's gonna get heavy. No more, cute anime zombie girl. For the ones that I just can't move past, I gotta admit, it's pretty hard, and, the more I tell myself, it's just a story, the worse I feel about it. I keep going back to Resident Evil, but the biggest thing that sticks out in my mind is Leon Kennedy. He's had his fair share of girls who were, like, implied to have crushes on him throughout the series, but I thought, yeah, well, he's the hero of the game. Heroes in action movies always have the girls fawning over him. And then I saw that cutscene from RE2 Remake with Ada Wong, and I'm not gonna pretend right now. Do I feel myself tearing up? I'm not even gonna pretend or hide the fact that I was devastated upon seeing that, because I was previously told that Leon never had any canonical relationships, so that really shook me. And so, like, sometimes when I think about him, it always drifts back to Ada Wong, no matter how much I try to put her out of my mind and say, that was one game, I try to make up silly excuses. It was just a dream. He was on drugs. It still comes back to her, and that's true for a lot of them, and so it kind of makes it sort of hard to fantasize about them. So, sometimes, like, I've kind of been feeling it with Leon again recently, because you have, the remake, you've got the Fortnite stuff, which I've still yet to react to, but it is very interesting. But yeah, having a fictional crush who already has a love interest is quite hard. I don't even know how to fully explain it for those who aren't fictosexual.
Do you consider them an actual partner? Like, when someone asks if you're single or taken, do you respond with taken in reference to your FO? Do you further specify to these people that your partner is fiction?
This is an easy one, because people hate fictosexuals. So when people ask me, single or taken, what's your sexuality? It depends on how comfortable I am with the person. If it's someone that I've known for a long time and I feel like is ready to handle it or hear the news, then, I tell them about it. But for most people, I sort of masquerade behind the label of asexual. Being ficto is on the asexual spectrum because you're not attracted to real people. But I feel like that's a very safe umbrella term to use. Umbrella. very, very safe term to use because it is a lot more respected than being a fictosexual. So, when people ask the single or taken question, I say single and I want to stay that way. I don't really want to date. I don't want to marry or have kids. I've got a fun little anecdote for you. So, before I knew my sexuality, this was in elementary school when kids were somehow already thinking about dating and getting married. I would always say, I don't want a husband, and this was how I justified it. On Pokemon Center, sometimes they sell these really adorable pairs of boy and girl Pikachu plushies together. And they might be in various situations, like they've got wedding ones, graduation ones, scuba diving ones, Hawaiian ones, whatever. And so I said, I don't want to have a husband because if I were to buy the set of Pikachus, he would likely want the boy. And so to have the full set of both Pikachus, I would have to buy another one. But then that leaves a spare girl, so what am I to do with that? And, that was a very early sign looking back, but that's just what I said, and I have a lot of funny, witty excuses for, why I don't want to get married or why I don't want to have kids. So it all depends on how familiar I am with you.
Has anyone here ever tried to think of a way to legally marry their FO? I know it's a silly question, but I'm sure we've all seen the guy married to Miku and the other guy who married his Twilight Sparkle doll.
So, like I've said before, I personally have never really considered trying to get married with a fictional character I like because there is just too many. And you never know what installments might happen in the future that might cause me to sort of lose the love I have for them. Or, something ends up happening. So I personally have never attempted to do that before.
Going off of the guy who married Miku and the guy that married Twilight Sparkle, does anyone often feel like those two and others like them have made kind of a mockery of community? Or do you think that they are valid representation for the sexuality?
This is a really, really tough one because people like that are the only representation that a majority of the world has for fictosexuality. And depending on the source that you see it from, they'll often be either sympathetic to these people or mocking them, being like, haha, look at this weirdo, look at this loser. And unfortunately, most people have only consumed the latter, and that's how fictophobia starts. It's already kind of ingrained within us, but it just intensifies and it causes people to say the awful things that they do. And, I think these people who have legally married their fictional crushes, they are valid. They are good, honest people. They did not share their story out into the world for you to tell them that their sexuality doesn't exist, that, everything they think about love is a lie, that they're just a weirdo. This is a huge issue that I often feel like I don't blame, these people, but I often feel like the impact that some of these news stories have had really deeply affects me. And, every time I see a post that's a picture of like someone with a body pillow or someone with their fictional crush photoshopped into the picture, and it's shown as a point and laugh thing, I feel sick inside. Like, I want to cry. Like, I even kind of want to cry right now thinking about it. Because it's almost like when people say, like, my gay siblings or my trans siblings, these are my fictosexual siblings. Even though I've never known them, I've never interacted with them online or offline before, I feel their pain, and it is a deep, sharp pain. Just to go out and express yourself and immediately getting shot down with absolutely no provocation. you know One day you think, you're just having fun showing off who you really are to the world, and then you wonder if you're even a real person anymore. It's just insane. Like I said, I don't know how to describe this for non-fictosexuals, but having a sort of statistically rare sexuality combined with poor media representation, life is hell. I'm gonna be honest. Like, life can be hell sometimes as a fictosexual, and people don't even need to say anything to me. Sometimes it's just internal turmoil. And, to go on a positive note, I think we need fictosexual representation that is positive. I mean, to start with that, we need positive asexual representation, because, oh boy, I'm not going to go too deep into it because there's many great videos about it. If you want to, you can go watch them, but, in summary, asexual representation on TV is not good. And same with autistic representation. As a person with autism, the way people portray people like me is just so degrading and dehumanizing. And a lot of the tropes used when portraying autism are also used when portraying asexuality. Like, they think that we are cold and, very logically minded. We don't have any emotions because we don't feel love. I want, like, now today we can have gay characters, lesbian characters, bi characters, trans characters on kids' shows, and they can just come out and say, hey, I'm gay, or walk in with their husband or wife, and we just instantly get it, and we're like, oh, okay, that's just who this character is. I wish we can do that with asexual characters, and maybe once it becomes the norm, maybe, just maybe, we will have this tiny little sliver of light for the fictosexual community.
Lastly, does anyone ship their FOs with other characters from their source material without actually being romantically interested in the characters you ship them with?
Yes, actually, it's very rare, but I can think of two big examples. One is Squall and Ultimecia from Final Fantasy VIII. I did kind of have a crush on Squall. I thought he was real good looking. Not Ultimecia, though. Like, she is, I think of her more as almost like an idol worship kind of thing. Like, the gif of SpongeBob bowing down to the Krabby Patty poster. Like, I'm like, oh my god, this girl is so cool. Wow, I wish I could be magical and intimidating like her. Wow, that is so awesome. And after watching some Japanese only Final Fantasy cutscenes, I definitely became a hardcore Squalmecia shipper, baby! It is a rare pairing, but I love it to death. It is probably one of my favorite media ships. I don't usually ship characters in media, but they're one of my biggest. And then my other big one is Gira Phi from Skyward Sword. That is Girahim X Phi. Girahim was one of my pretty early fictional crushes. Phi, again, one of those characters I sort of looked up to, like, wow, I wish I was like them. I have some pictures posted on my community tab a while back of me cosplaying Phi at a convention, and it was just so fun. So yeah, it is very rare, but in most instances, the female character will almost be, sort of like a figure of worship rather than like a figure of love. And I think we can definitely expand upon this idea of like a fictional character as sort of a figure of worship in another video, but you know, it's getting long. Let's wrap it up. So, my little hackmons, I hope you really enjoyed this video and you found it informative. And, you know, if you have any other questions about what it's like to be fictosexual, please let me know in the comments and I will be more than happy to answer them, because I am here to increase awareness and increase acceptance. I want to spread love for people just like me. I want to be a leader in a community that barely anyone knows exists. So please, if you are confused of anything, if you want to ask anything, don't be shy. Please go ahead and ask. And, you know, feel free to send this video to your friends or family if need be. You know, if maybe they've been saying some really fictophobic things lately, or you're a fictosexual and you kind of need to relay some of this information to them, please feel free to spread the word. I hope you all, wherever you are, have a great day, afternoon, or night. You are all wonderful people. Thank you for taking the time to watch this.